strikes.
U.S. War Secretary Pete Hegseth grilled over cost of war in Congress, saying the 60-day Iran conflict has cost under $25 billion so far, while dismissing concerns over depleted U.S. munitions as propaganda for enemies.
The United States is considering reducing troop levels in Germany amid tensions with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz over Iran war. Donald Trump says a decision would be made soon, with current troop number which are estimated between 35,000 and 50,000.
I talked about Ukraine, and I talked a little bit about Iran. I talked about a few different subjects, mostly about Ukraine, and we had a very good conversation.
Donald Trump speaks by phone with Vladimir Putin about a possible ceasefire in the Ukraine war, describes the call as positive and says he proposed a limited ceasefire, adding that Putin might consider it.
US President reportedly tells Benjamin Netanyahu that Israel should restrict its operations in Lebanon to surgical strikes and avoid escalating into full-scale war, saying widespread destruction harms Israel's image.
UK police treat North London stabbing of two Jewish men as terrorist incidents. Both victims are in stable condition. A British man born in Somalia arrested on suspicion of attempted murder after trying to stab police officers.
New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani says King Charles should return the Kohinoor diamond. The comment came before a 9/11 memorial event where he met the British monarch briefly. India has long sought the diamond's return from Britain.
The U.S. Federal Reserve held rates steady for the third consecutive meeting on Wednesday. The 8-4 pause vote was the most divided decision since October 1992. On poly market, the odds of a Fed rate cut this year fell to a new low of 44%.
US President Donald Trump has warned that the US naval blockade against Iran could last months, as he urged Tehran to get smart soon and sign a deal.
He said that talks with the Islamic Republic are now being conducted by phone. Speaking to reporters at the White House, Trump reiterated that any agreement would depend on Iran fully abandoning its nuclear ambitions.
We're not going to let Iran have a nuclear weapon. And we've knocked out their Navy, we've knocked out their Air Force, we've knocked out their anti-aircraft, everything, apparatus, everything they have, their radar. They have very little left. And they have some missiles, a small percentage. They have a small percentage of missile-making facilities. We knocked out about 80% of them. The rest could come very quickly if we don't make a deal. They're not going to have a nuclear weapon. They know it. And just about everybody else does.
Trump believes that a blockade is a key strategy to force Iran to abandon its nuclear program. It prompted oil prices to spike to their highest level in 4 years. Brent crude futures soared another 7.6% to $120 a barrel, which is the highest price since the early days of the Ukraine war in 2022.
Now, Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf predicted on social media that it will climb to $140 a barrel, going on to frame Washington's approach as strategically incoherent.
Now, during a meeting with all executives, Trump argued that the blockade is more effective than bombing. And this even as an Axios report suggests that U.S. Central Command is prepared for a short and powerful wave of strikes on
Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Saeed Khatibzadeh said war is not a solution to resolve the ongoing crisis, stressing that diplomacy remains the only viable path forward amid a stalemate in talks.
Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin also warned against military action on Iran. Now, in more than a 90-minute-long call with Donald Trump on Wednesday, he highlighted the inevitable and extremely damaging consequences, not only for Iran and its neighbors, but also the international community should the U.S. with Israel sought to strike once again.
He also said Russia was firmly committed to providing every possible assistance to diplomatic efforts on the West Asia war. Trump said Putin offered to help U.S. handle Iran's enriched uranium as part of a potential nuclear deal.
He told me he'd like to be involved with the enrichment if he can help us get it. I said I'd much rather have you be involved with ending the war with Ukraine.
And now joining us live on the broadcast is Lieutenant Colonel Daniel L. Davis from Sterling. He's a military expert and host of Daniel Davis Deep Dive on YouTube. Thank you so much, Colonel Davis, for joining us on the broadcast. Now, there's a lot to unpack here, and I'm curious to know that if these short and powerful wave of strikes, they actually do take place, do you think it could materially change enough to bring back Iran to the negotiating table, ready to, agree to Washington's demands?
Yeah, the thing about it we got to understand is that Iran is at the table. They're just not agreeing to the basically demands for surrender that the United States is asking them to do. They're not going to do that. And another round of strikes is not going to coerce them to do what the first 40 days of strikes did not do, but it will also prompt Iran to strike much more valuable targets around our allies in the region, the GCC countries, as well as Israel, attacking targets that they hadn't struck before. So I think that it would only backfire. It would not cause them. I think that we need to be clear that the Iranians know how to suffer, and they are well aware of what the cost is going to be to this, but they calculate that the cost to the United States and our allies is higher than what it is for them to if this continues on for a while. So they don't want to give in to that, and another round of strikes is not going to result in it. So I hope that they don't do that, take that path.
Right. Colonel Davis, please stay with us. We have some breaking news coming in at this moment. The U.S. President Donald Trump, in a post on Truth Social, he has shared a map which shows the Strait of Hormuz, labeled as the Strait of Trump. And this as maritime tensions between the U.S. and Iran have reached a critical deadlock, marked by a U.S. naval blockade on Iranian ports. Now, Trump has cleared that the U.S. will maintain the blockade until a deal is reached. This is the latest we're getting in at this moment. U.S. President Trump on Truth Social, he has shared a map which shows the Strait of Hormuz labeled as the Strait of Trump. And this as maritime tensions between the U.S. and Iran have reached a critical deadlock, marked by a U.S. naval blockade on Iranian ports. And Trump has cleared that the U.S. will maintain the blockade until a deal is reached. Now, Colonel Davis, how do you read into this latest that we are getting at this moment? Because what we're seeing is a parallel of diplomacy, which has been a stalemate for a while that we have seen. There's also reports of this short and powerful strikes, as we were just discussing. And of course, the economic pressure is mounting with now the Strait of Hormuz. As our viewers can see on the screen, now Trump has called it the Strait of Trump. How are you reading into this?
Yeah, I dismiss that entirely. That's just President Trump is routinely doing that kind of thing. Now he had another AI-generated image of himself earlier this morning to where he was playing Tony Stark in an Iron Man movie and changed up to be Iran. So I just don't pay any attention to that whatsoever. The only thing we pay attention to is what he actually does on the ground there. And I think that he is getting a lot of information from his military commanders not to take this opportunity for strike, because they too recognize that it will have a backfire effect from Iran and it will not accomplish the objective on the ground, because it's just the country of Iran is too big, and their issues and their military capacities are buried under mountainsides, and you're not going to be able to penetrate those. We've tried and we haven't succeeded and another round is not going to change any of that, but it could cause more damage to our allies and to our economy, because that will push back the possibility of getting the strait opened up. It won't help. So I hope they don't do it.
Daniel, with this breaking news coming in that he's calling it Strait of Trump, Trump even says that Iran is choking, but Iran openly says that it is ready to escalate the war if necessary. So who is misreading the moment right now? Because both sides, they claim ready, they claim they are prepared. Who is misreading the moment?
Well, there's no doubt that it's President Trump that's misreading. The Iranian side has been very, very clear about where they are and what their positions are and what they're willing to do and what they're not willing to do. And thus far in most of this war, they have pretty much done what they said, and they have refrained from escalating in the kinds of targets that would be the most damaging, hoping that we can avoid escalation. But there is no possibility that they're going to give in. And just take a look at it, because all the stuff that we have done so far with the blockade, with all of the 40 days of attacks that came first, Iran, even though you assassinated some of their leaders, their government is still fully intact. They still have all of their long-range missiles. They still have their nuclear enrichment capacity, and they still have support from their regional allies. You've stopped none of those things. And when President Trump brags that he's destroyed their Navy, no, he has not destroyed their most important Navy, which is those small attack craft, and there are probably thousands of them that he has not touched. And we know that they still have most of their missile capacity intact. They still have their production capacity under the ground, despite what he said. So there's no question that President Trump is misreading this. But the only question is he misreading it, or is he just saying these things out in public, thinking that's going to move the needle? Because he's very keen on doing that in the past, but Iran is not going to give in to just verbal threats. You're going to have to do something, or they're going to hold their side of the strait closed.
Daniel, now that you mention about the war costs that United States is facing, the Pentagon says the war has already cost $25 billion, alongside a push for $1.5 trillion defense budget in future. That's a lot. And the cost, can it raise the stakes for U.S. to now actually exit the war, finally?
Well, yes, there's no question about that, too, because we have used, even aside from the physical cost, it's the cost to our inventories. How many of these high-speed JASSM cruise missiles we've used, how many of the Tomahawk cruise missiles, the THAAD interceptors, the PAC-3 interceptors. Those are the key weapon systems that we have, both offensive and defensive. And according to all reports, we have used a substantial portion of all that we have in our inventories. And if you go back and start doing that again and just using them futile ways on these mountainsides that you can't penetrate, then you literally just throw them away. Now then, if you have any need, say in Europe somewhere with, God forbid, some kind of an action with Russia, or something in Asia with China, we are almost defenseless. And that's the key thing you got to understand. It doesn't matter how many planes, how many aircraft carriers, how many tanks you have, etc. It matters how many weapon systems you have, how much ammunition that you have, how many missiles. And if you don't have enough, it doesn't matter how many carriers you have. It only matters what you can shoot. And that will put us in a really bad place, much more than just the physical cost, though that is also piling up on top of the issues with fertilizer, with helium getting out, all of which has economic impacts, and just feeding people. These things are things that are going to be medium term. That's not even near term, and a lot of these are already baked in. So there's a lot of cost, and every day we delay opening this strait up and ending the war, we increase the cost for us and our allies.
Absolutely, Colonel Davis, and you raised some very interesting points there. But of course, we'll have to wait and see how the situation develops from here on. But for now, thank you so much for joining us in the broadcast and sharing your insights with us.
Thank you.
Well, U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth faced some tough questions from U.S. lawmakers on the Iran conflict.
And this is Pete Hegseth's first testimony to U.S. Congress since the war in West Asia began. Appearing before the House Armed Services Committee, Hegseth quickly struck a combative tone, saying in his opening remarks that the main challenge at this point is the defeatist words of Congressional Democrats and some Republicans. Hegseth insisted that Tehran had not given up their nuclear ambitions, and they still have thousands of missiles. Listen to this.
President Trump has been clear-eyed, from the killing of Qasem Soleimani to the pulling out of the Iran deal to Midnight Hammer, and now to this effort to recognize that you have to stare down this kind of enemy who's hell-bent on getting a nuclear weapon and get them to a point where they're at the table giving it up. in a way that
So they
ensures
haven't
never have it.
The Secretary of War's statement comes at a time when the war in West Asia remains unresolved and the economic fallout from it is continuing globally. As the hearing went on, the committee raised several questions on the feasibility of the war and how much it has cost the U.S. A senior Pentagon official provided the first official estimate of the military's price tag for the conflict.
Thank you for that question. So approximately at this day, we're spending about $25 billion on Operation Epic Fury. Most of that is munitions. There's part of that is obviously O&M and equipment replacement. We will formulate a supplemental through the White House that will come to Congress once we have a full assessment of the cost of the conflict.
So you're saying the full cost at this point is $25 billion?
Yeah, that's our estimate for the cost.
Now, the comments came as U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth defended the war to lawmakers amid skepticism from some Democrats on the committee about the rationale for going to war and the toll it has taken on the United States' readiness. Hegseth and Democrat representative from California even had a fiery exchange on how Iran war is costing the people of United States.
Previous administration did to our economy, what the previous administration did with inflation, what the previous administration did with COVID, and you're going to lecture this administration about the economy?
You know what is upsetting?
Incredible.
You didn't even do the analysis on how much it's costing the American people. It's one thing if you said, okay, it costs the American people $5,000, but we think it's worth it. That's what we've done in World War II and other wars. Here's what it costs. You got to pay for it. You don't even know what the average American is paying. You don't know what we paid in terms of the missiles that hit the Iranian school. You don't know what we're paying in terms of gas. You don't know what we're paying in terms of food. Your 25 billion number is totally off.
Meanwhile, Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman General Dan Kane told lawmakers that President Trump is making trade-offs in focusing the military on Iran versus other key threats like China.
A president will employ national force and power based on the political and security situations that a president deems appropriate to use that military force. There's always trade-offs in all of these things. I'm confident that the president always carefully considers these readiness trade-offs, and I'm sure he has done so in this case based on the military options that we've presented with the associated risks and advice.
Now, Trump and his administration have yet to publicly provide a plan for winding down the war, which has led Iran to close the vital Strait of Hormuz waterway, sending oil prices skyrocketing. Now, a U.S. naval blockade of Iran's ports continue, and the U.S. has 3 aircraft carriers deployed in for the first time in more than 20 years. And former FBI Director James Comey has surrendered to authorities in Virginia after being charged with threatening President Donald Trump's life with a social media post.
Well, Comey made an Instagram post in May last year that showed the numbers 86 and 47 spelled out in seashells. Trump alleged in an interview with Fox News at the time that 86 was slang for kill and 47 was a reference to his being the 47th president. He reiterated his allegations while addressing the media on Wednesday.
Well, if anybody knows anything about crime, they know 86. You know what 86? It's a mob term for kill 'em. You know, you ever see the movies? 86 'em. The mobster says to one of his wonderful associates, 86 'em. That means kill 'em. It's. I think of it as a mob term. I don't know. People think of it as something having to do with disappearing, but the mob uses that term to say when they want to kill somebody.
Well, Trump said that people like Comey have created tremendous danger for politicians when asked if he really thought his life was in danger.
Comey is a dirty cop. He's a very dirty cop. He cheated on the elections. He tried to help Hillary Clinton, as you know. He dismissed a lot of things that he should have proceeded with. I wasn't involved, but he should have proceeded with. No, he's a dirty cop. He's a crooked man.
Comey turned himself in on 2 charges, including threatening the life of the president and transmitting threats across state lines. The charges carry a maximum penalty for 5 years in prison. The former FBI director did not speak during a brief court appearance. However, in a social media post on Tuesday, he had said he is innocent and vowed to fight the accusations in court.
U.S. Acting Attorney Todd Blanche said that Comey will be given every single right, every single opportunity to defend his case.
Now, in a horrifying incident, 2 Jewish men have been stabbed in North London by an attacker who ran down a street targeting Jews.
Well, security camera shows the moment of attack in London's Jewish area. Security camera footage captured the moment of stabbing near a bus stop in Golders Green, North London, home to a large Jewish community.
A body-worn camera video footage also showed Metropolitan Police officers detaining the knife attack suspect. The officers shot tasers at the attacker in a bid to subdue him.
Keep it today! Arrest on suspicion of attempted murder. Do not have to say anything of me. I'm in defence. Do mention weight question, something which you later on in court.
The UK police has said the suspect was arrested after allegedly trying to stab officers. Officials cordoned off the area where the stabbing incident took place. According to the police, 2 victims, one in his 70s and the other in his 30s, are both in stable condition in hospital.
Meanwhile, the UK police has declared the stabbing a terrorist act. The police has also indicated the suspect shares a violent past and possibly has mental health issues.
Meanwhile, Londoners call for the resignation of London's Met Police Commissioner, Mark Rowley, by chanting "Shame on you" slogans.
You allow behavior. Sir, what's happening? Off you go. Shame on you. 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 Shame on you.
I want to make it clear that counterterrorism policing and police forces up and down the country are mobilising to provide additional support and reassurance. And we request that the public are vigilant and stand alongside communities who may be feeling worried this evening. Please report anything that doesn't feel right and be alert to what is happening where you live. Information you share can make a difference. Thank you.
Prime Minister Keir Starmer has called the spate of anti-Semitic attacks utterly appalling. UK lawmaker Sarah Sackman has said Starmer has called a high-level emergency response COBRA meeting in light of the situation.
Concerning to everyone in this House, there is now a police investigation, and I think we all need to do everything we can to support that investigation and be absolutely clear in our determination to deal with any of these offences, the like of which we've seen too much recently.
In fact, London Mayor Sadiq Khan said the incident left him angry. Listen to this.
I'm angry, I'm appalled, I'm disgusted. The Jewish people are going to bed frightened. They're waking up frightened. They're living their lives frightened. This is no way to live. I'm appalled and angry that over the last few weeks we've seen places of worship attacked because they are Jewish, buildings attacked because they are Jewish, London is attacked because they are Jewish.
Israeli President Isaac Herzog condemned the incident, saying urgent action was needed to prevent attacks against Jews. This is the latest in a spate of anti-Semitic attacks in the UK, prompting urgent calls for action from leaders in Britain and Israel. Last October, 2 people and the attacker were killed in an attack on a synagogue in Manchester, after which Prime Minister Starmer has promised to tackle the rise of anti-Semitism.
And with that, it's time for us to slip into a very short break on World DNA.
But coming up, we have more news and updates. Srinagar police cracks down on 2 separate terror modules. 5 overground workers, including a medical professional, have been arrested in the operation. We get you all of this and more. Stay tuned to WION World is One. This is World DNA.
where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Crime is your front row seat to darkness. In-depth coverage of global issues broken down into facts, figures, and simple words. Backed with analysis from field experts who truly matter, because we believe in decoding the real picture for you. So you get a much wider and deeper understanding of stories from around the world, a 360-degree analysis. An award-winning documentary series, week after week creating the maximum impact. Watch WION Wide Angle at these times on WION World is One.
Campaigns, elections, alliances, controversies, and power play. Stories that analyze global and domestic politics. A dedicated show with varied perspectives, expert take, citizens' voices, detailed ground reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to Power, only on WION.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. This is World DNA with me, Kripa and Diksha. Let's start with the headlines.
US President Donald Trump posts a map on Truth Social, labeling the Strait of Hormuz as Strait of Trump. Hours after, he said the US naval blockade of Iranian ports will continue until a deal is reached and may last for months.
United States is considering reducing troop levels in Germany amid tensions with German Chancellor Merz over Iran war. Donald Trump says the decision would be made soon, with current troop numbers estimated between 35,000 and 50,000.
And we're not flying anymore with 18-hour flights every time we want to see a piece of paper. We're doing it telephonically, and it's very nice.
Donald Trump says talks with Iran are now being held by phone after cancelling trip for negotiators to travel to Pakistan. Insists that Tehran must abandon any nuclear weapons ambitions to reach an agreement.
U.S. War Secretary Pete Hegseth grilled over cost of war in Congress, saying the 60-day Iran conflict has cost under $25 billion so far. This while dismissing concerns over depleted U.S. munitions as propaganda for enemies.
Kremlin says Putin warned Trump during a phone call of extremely damaging consequences if US or Israel carries out further military action against Iran. He cautioned that such action would harm Iran, its neighbors, and the wider international community.
US President reportedly tells Benjamin Netanyahu that Israel should restrict its operations in Lebanon to surgical strikes and avoid escalating into full-scale war, saying widespread destruction harms Israel's image.
New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani says King Charles should return the Kohinoor diamond. The comment came before a 9/11 memorial event where he met the British monarch briefly. India has long sought the diamond's return from Britain.
Pakistani security forces killed 6 militants in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa after repelling an overnight attack on a police post in Bannu district. Officials say armed attackers targeted Mazanga police post.
Oil prices surged on Thursday, with Brent crude nearing $20 a barrel as a prolonged US blockade on Iranian exports tightened global supply. But signs of weakening demand are emerging, raising concerns about how long the rally can last.
Nearly two-thirds of South Sudan's population is facing acute hunger crisis.
Authorities say that nearly 7.9 million people face food insecurity and famine-like conditions amid a resurgence of fighting between government and opposition forces, prompting authorities to urge for urgent resources.
In 2025, famine was confirmed in Gaza and parts of Sudan, marking the first time 2 separate famines have been recorded in a single year since tracking began.
The violence is particularly intense in Ronglei state, which according to the United Nations faces risk of famine, with 2.2 million children under age 5, which are projected to be acutely malnourished. Meanwhile, hundreds of thousands have been displaced in Sudan due to the ongoing civil war, which is now in its 4th year. All right, and moving on, King Charles may have been received with full ceremonial honors in Washington, but beyond the pageantry, the visit comes at a moment when the US-UK ties are being tested.
Well, it has been tested, especially over the Iran war. So will this royal visit help bridge the political divide? Here's a report.
Gun salutes, flags flying high, and a ceremonial military honor marked the arrival of King Charles at the White House. A grand diplomatic unity between 2 longtime allies were at display in Washington when the King and the Queen were received by President Trump and First Lady Melania. The visit comes at a fraught moment. The special relationship between the 2 countries is facing fresh strains.
I will never let this country be dragged into a war that is not in our interests. Never!
Trump has repeatedly criticized Keir Starmer over London's reluctance to back Washington's war with Iran.
Well, yeah, I'm disappointed with Carolina.
When Britain refused to allow U.S. troops access to its bases, Trump, in an interview with Fox News, responded bluntly saying, "This is not Winston Churchill we are dealing with." Cut to yesterday, King Charles delivered a light-hearted yet sharp-witted history lesson at the White House dinner. The British monarch playfully roasted Trump.
Indeed, you recently commented, Mr. President, that if it were not for the United States, European countries would be speaking German. Dare I say that if it wasn't for us, you'd be speaking French.
He made further jokes at Trump's expense, saying he could not help noticing the readjustments to the White House East Wing, which Trump demolished to build a giant $400 million ballroom. King Charles also addresses the Congress, the first British monarch to do so since 1991. During his address, he called Congress a citadel of democracy and reminded lawmakers of their shared roots in the rule of law. Even as tensions simmered, Trump struck a friendlier note by publicly praising the king and joking about his family's admiration for the royal household.
My mother, I just see it so clearly. She loved, and I told the king this, she loved the royal family, and she loved the queen. And anytime the queen was involved in a ceremony or anything, my mother would be glued to the television and she'd say, "Look, Donald, look how beautiful that is." She really did love the family.
The UK and US have weathered revolutions, wars, and global shifts. The two counties forged one of the most consequential alliances in modern history. Now, as differences over Iran and global policy widen, King Charles's visit is a reminder that even the strongest ties require constant repair. The question is, can royal diplomacy reset what politics has strained?
In a major counter-terrorism breakthrough, Srinagar police have cracked down on 2 separate terror modules.
Well, 5 overground workers, including a medical professional, have been arrested in the operation. Officials say the coordinated operations were carried out by multiple police units under the direct supervision of the Senior Superintendent of Srinagar Police. Now, in the first operation, a joint team raided a terror hideout in Channa Mohalla in Mulfaq. A cache of high-grade weapons and incriminating material have been recovered, including an AK-47 rifle, 14 rounds of ammunition and a hand grenade.
In a separate overnight operation, a police team nabbed 5 suspects at a checkpoint in Nardsangri. Officials say the arrests were made during routine checks, but recovery points to terror links. A case has been registered at Pantha Chowk police station with a detailed probe underway. Meanwhile, authorities are analyzing seized phones to trace the wider network amid efforts to dismantle remaining modules and prevent threats.
And for more on this, our senior special correspondent Idris Loan has sent us this report from Srinagar. Take a look.
Jammu and Kashmir police has busted 2 terror modules in the Kashmir Valley. The first operation was carried out by a joint team of Sovra's Zadibal Lal Bazar area in the outskirts of Srinagar, where security forces recovered AK-47 rifle, 14 rounds of the AK-47 rifle, including more arms and ammunition from a hideout. The second operation was carried out by Jammu and Kashmir police in the Konmu area, where 5 over-the-ground workers were arrested by security forces, including a doctor from whose possession they have found 2 hand grenades and some other arms and ammunition, as well as mobile phones. Security forces are calling it a big success, as these over-the-ground workers were not only providing logistical supports but also carrying arms and ammunition from one point to another to help the terror activities in Kashmir division. With video journalist Feroz, Idris Loan for WION World is One.
Well, the number of people suffering from heart disease in India has nearly tripled over the past 7 years.
According to the latest National Statistical Organization survey, young people are also showing vulnerability to heart-related illnesses, which is even more concerning. The findings show that cardiovascular diseases and metabolic disorders such as diabetes account for the largest share of illnesses. Alongside these, respiratory conditions and bone and joint pain are also widely reported. Heart-related illnesses have emerged as the country's leading health burden. They make up 25.6% of total diseases, which is the highest among all categories. This is followed by disorders linked to hormones, blood sugar levels, and nutrition.
Well, the survey also found that infections were the leading cause of hospital admissions among people aged 15 to 29, accounting for 27%, and in the same age group, cardiovascular-related hospitalizations were lower at 3.4%. Among those aged 30 to 44, cardiovascular admissions stood at 7.3% in 2025. Now, the figure rose sharply to 13.9% in the 45 to 59 category age group, and for those above 60, it increased further to 18.2%.
Well, heart-related hospital admissions are substantial in both rural and urban regions. The report also points out that heart diseases are among the costliest conditions to treat in hospitals. However, some other serious illnesses can involve even higher treatment costs. U.S. Federal Reserve Chief Jerome Powell's final press conference did not rock the boat.
But he and a majority of Fed policymakers erred a bit on the hawkish side given the lack of progress in the Gulf. So at this swan song meeting, as Fed boss Powell once again carried an anti-Trump crescendo. Well, the Fed held rates steady for the third consecutive meeting, despite President Trump's repeated rhetoric for deep rate cuts. But the 8-4 vote on Wednesday's meeting was the most divided decision since October 1992.
Today, the FOMC decided to leave our policy rate unchanged. We see the current stance of monetary policy as appropriate to promote progress toward our maximum employment and 2% inflation goals. Developments in the Middle East are contributing to a high level of uncertainty about the economic outlook, and we will remain attentive to risks to both sides of our dual mandate.
With Fed pick Kevin Warsh confirmed at a key Senate committee vote to become the next boss, Trump's desire for rate cuts could come true now. However, Warsh faces a tough inflation environment to ease rates. For Fed policymakers dissented on the pause and internet rate decision. That is the first time since 1992 when there have been so many policymakers voting against a common decision. The dissents went in opposite directions. Fed Dove Stephen Miran once again voted in favor of a 0.25% rate cut.
Now, on the other hand, Elizabeth Morgan Hammack, Neil Kashkari and Lori Logan objected to including easing bias in the statement. Lisa Cook, who was targeted by the Trump administration, aligned with the stance favored by Powell.
Policymakers were concerned that the Iran war developments were contributing to a high level of uncertainty. The statement specifically noted concern over increase in energy prices, with policymakers bracing for more inflation. On Wednesday, Trump rejected Iran's Hormuz offer, keeping the U.S. blockade in place.
Well, the historic energy shock due to the Iran war has led to higher fuel and airline prices. That is pushing U.S. inflation back towards 4%.
Inflation has moved up recently and is elevated relative to our 2% longer run goal. Estimates based on the Consumer Price Index and other data indicate that total PCE prices rose 3.5% over the 12 months ending in March, boosted by the significant rise in global oil prices that has resulted from the conflict in the Middle East. Excluding the volatile food and energy categories, core PCE prices rose 3.2% over the 12 months ending in March.
Still, the Fed indicated the current rise in price pressures as a transitory supply shock rather than a demand-driven inflation spiral. Unlike the pandemic, supply disruptions are narrower now and household real incomes are already under pressure. So that reduces the second-round inflation effect risk. But poly market bets show that the Fed is no longer expected to cut interest rates in 2026. The odds of the Fed cutting rates this year fell to a new low of 44%.
And for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani has sent us this report from New York. Take a look.
Well, the Justice Department recently dropped its criminal probe into Fed renovation costs. Jerome Powell says that the broader political pressure from President Trump and his administration threatens the Fed's independence, and he wants to stay on as a governor. Now, Powell can stay on as a governor until 2028, making it harder for the White House to reshape the Fed quickly, even with a new chair. Meanwhile, the U.S. Central Bank announced that it will not change the country's key lending rate for a third consecutive time. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
All right, and moving on, Japan Airlines is set to trial humanoid robots at Tokyo's Haneda Airport as it looks to address labor shortages in ground operations.
Now, the 2-year trial will begin in May with robots assisting in tasks such as baggage handling and aircraft cleaning. The robots developed in China will initially be used to load and unload cargo containers. The project is being carried out in partnership with GMO AI and Robotics, a Tokyo-based company that develops and deploys AI and robotics solution for real-world industries. During a media demonstration, the company said that airport operations still rely heavily on human labor and are increasingly affected by staff shortages.
Japan Airlines says the technology could later be expanded to include cleaning aircraft cabins and operating ground support equipment. The move comes as Japan's aviation sector faces growing pressure from an aging and shrinking workforce.
At the same time, a surge in inbound tourism is driving up workloads for existing staff. The airline currently employs around 4,000 ground handling workers, but says demand is increasing.
Data from the Japan National Tourism Organization shows that the country recorded 3.46 million visitors in February alone, up more than 6% from a year earlier.
Robots are already in use at some Japanese airports, including for security patrols and retail services. The latest trial marks a further step towards automating labor-intensive tasks in aviation. From the world of sports now, the Afghan refugee women's football team has been allowed to compete in official international matches by FIFA.
Afghan refugees across the world will represent the national team for the first time, which is against the wishes of the Taliban. Well, the refugee team is known as Afghan Women United, and the members are scattered around the world, mainly in Australia, West Asia and Europe. Now, FIFA has made a regulation change which allows the Afghanistan team to compete without the approval of the Taliban. Under the previous rules, FIFA required the team to receive recognition from the Afghanistan Football Federation, which is directly controlled by the Taliban. The Afghan Football Federation will not recognize a women's football team due to the Taliban's ban on women's sports. For more than 3 years, there has been a campaign to urge FIFA to intervene and provide the team official recognition and financial support.
Well, Afghan Women United was formed after the Taliban returned to power in 2021, and the official women's national team, which had been set up in 2007, was banned, with most of their players seeking asylum. Former Afghanistan team captain Khalida Bhopal, who is now living as a refugee in Denmark, hailed the historic decision.
It's a historic moment right now that I've witnessed. It's extremely empowering, and it's something that we have been waiting and fighting for such a long time to get the recognition, and getting FIFA on board with us to recognize our team and allow our team to play and represent the women of Afghanistan as a national team.
In other news, South Korean Chinese boy band EXO's concert in Vietnam has gone viral, but not for the usual reasons.
This time, it is a light, unexpected moment involving member Chanyeol's outfit that has fans talking and laughing. During the performance, Chanyeol stepped on stage in an áo đai, the traditional Vietnamese long tunic, but missed a key part of the look. While the rest of the group wore it as intended, he appeared in just the top with shorts underneath that weren't really visible. Fans at the venue later shared that he reportedly realized the styling detail only right before going on stage, leaving no time for a quick fix.
Now, clips from the concert quickly made their way online, and the moment caught on instantly. Social media was flooded with reactions, with fans finding the situation both funny and endearing. What stood out was how effortlessly Chanyeol has owned the moment, performing with full confidence despite the mix-up. The singer wore shorts underneath, but because of the length and flow of the outfit, they stayed hidden, which only added to the humor. The incident has now become one of the most talked about highlights from EXO's Vietnam show.
Now let's turn our attention to Berlin, where an exhibition on regular animals has garnered significant attention.
And it's not about animals though. Instead, it features robotic dogs modeled after key tech leaders. Let's take a look at some of the visuals from the exhibition.
Now, our view of the world is shaped by tech billionaires who own powerful algorithms that decide what we see and what we don't see, how much we see of it.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of World DNA. But don't go anywhere. More news and updates will follow on the other side. You're watching WION World is One. Stay tuned.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Prime is your front row seat to darkness. In-depth coverage of global issues broken down into facts, figures, and simple words. Backed with analysis from field experts who truly matter, because we believe in decoding the real picture for you. So you get a much wider and deeper understanding of stories from around the world, a 360-degree analysis. An award-winning documentary series, week after week creating the maximum impact. Watch WION Wide Angle at these times on WION World is One. 5 states, 1 powerful voice. From Tamil Nadu to West Bengal. From Kerala to Assam. Every vote shapes the future. Get the election pulse only on WION. WION, India's global voice. The channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is One.
In this rapidly changing world, is your health keeping pace? Best practices and breakthroughs busting the hype with real insights. The timeless power of yoga and ancient healing. Good food, good mood. Small steps, big impact. Your health matters. Only on WION World is One. Because nothing matters more.
campaigns, elections, alliances, controversies, and power play. Stories that analyze global and domestic politics. A dedicated show with varied perspectives, expert take, citizens' voices, detailed ground reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to Power, only on WION.
In West Asia, every move shifts the world's balance. Wars, ceasefires, alliances, power never stands still. From Tehran to Tel Aviv, from Damascus to Doha, the West Asia Post cuts through the chaos to reveal the region that shapes the world. Because what happens in West Asia never stays in West Asia. This is the West Asia Post, the region's story, the world's impact.
Get the latest updates.
Destroy their
Breaking
missiles
news.
and raise their...
Credible, clear, continuous. Experts across aisles. Diverse voices, one platform. WION World is one.
Vielleicht nur als Imposant.
Hello and welcome back to WION World is One. I'm Kanishka Sarkar and you have tuned into Speed News. Let's get to the top stories that we're tracking for you at this hour. US President Donald Trump has warned that the US naval blockade against Iran could last for months as he urged Tehran to get smart soon and sign a deal. He said that talks with the Islamic Republic are now being conducted by phone. Speaking to reporters at the White House, Trump reiterated that any agreement would depend on Iran fully abandoning its nuclear ambitions. Donald Trump said naval blockade on Iran could continue for months as oil prices surged to their highest levels in over 4 years. Trump believes that a blockade is a key strategy to force Iran to abandon its nuclear program. Brent oil futures soared another 7.5% to $120 a barrel, which is the highest price since early days of the Ukraine war in 2022. President Donald Trump, in a post on Truth Social, has shared a map which shows the Strait of Hormuz labeled as Strait of Trump. This as maritime tensions between the US and Iran have reached a critical deadlock marked by a US naval blockade on Iranian ports. Trump has cleared that US will maintain the blockade until a deal is reached. US Secretary of War Pete Hegseth insisted before the House Armed Services Committee that Tehran had not given up their nuclear ambitions and still have thousands of missiles. His statement comes at a time when the war in West Asia